Today on Ministry Monday, I'm speaking to Father Paul Turner. Hi, Father Paul. How are you?
Amanda, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for the invitation to join you today.
Thank you. I have to admit, I always love our Ministry Monday interviews because you always come with such knowledge, to which I will be asking for just a little bit more of today.
Well, thanks. I'll be glad to contribute what I can. You've got a great program. I'm a faithful listener to Ministry Monday, so
Oh,
thanks
thank
for
you.
all your work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. So today, Father Paul, we are going to be talking about the Exsultet, the sacred chant that we hear every year on Easter Vigil. And we're really going to be unpacking that over the next couple of weeks with Ministry Monday. But I really wanted to start today by looking at the roots of the Exsultet, if you're okay with that.
You bet. That would be just great. We have
Okay.
references to people singing something about a candle in the 4th century, but we don't really have a text to look at until the arrival of a book called the Gothic Missal in the 7th century. So this predates the Roman Missal. It was one that had a smaller circulation, but some vibrancy because it was handed on from one generation to the next and through at least some area. So we do have this treasure that dates to this time, and it's the original version is a bit longer than the one we use today. It went through some renovations for the Roman Missal, and then in the 3rd edition, actually in the post-Vatican II Church, it was tidied up a little bit more. And of course, we have a fresh translation of it now in the 3rd edition of the Roman Missal. I'm saying fresh; it's about 10 years old now, but it is compared to the 7th century. That's pretty fresh.
I'd say that's pretty fresh. Yeah, I'd say so too. So let's fast forward then from the 7th century to the pre-Vatican II liturgy. So pre-Vatican II Council, what was the Exsultet's role?
Yeah, its role came near the beginning of the Easter Vigil as we experience it now. It had a couple of different differences within the liturgical structure of the vigil than what we honor right now. For example, it came immediately before the Gloria. It was kind of the last bit of some of the vigiling that took place. And then when the Gloria began, people were more in the mind of celebrating the Easter Mass, if you will. But one of the other interesting things about it pertains to the grains of incense that we put into the candle. I'm not even sure if many people realize that that's what those are. You see these pins sticking in your Paschal candle that look decorative. The idea is that those are grains of incense on a pin that sticks into the candle and reminds us of the 5 wounds of Christ that are now symbols of his triumph over death. So in the past, those incense grains were placed into the candle during the Exsultet.
Oh,
There
wow.
was a phrase about the offering of the sacrifice of the candle, and it's believed that somewhere along the line the Latin words were miscopied or misunderstood to refer to incense at that time. So that generated this custom of accompanying the words with the action. Today we realize that that wasn't the intent of the original words. So the incense grains have been pulled to an earlier part of the celebration where they are part of the preparation of the candle. The wording of it there is kind of unusual in the missal. It seems to imply that the use of those grains is actually optional, that it isn't required to have them. We are required to carve into the candle the cross, the Greek letters alpha and omega, A and Z of the equivalent of that in the Greek alphabet, and this beautiful prayer that the priest says as he does that to signify Christ. So those actions are now coming at the beginning, and the Exsultet stands on its own as this remarkable proclamation of what is happening on this great night.
In the pre-Vatican II liturgy, too, not only did, like you just described, did it have a different place in the role in the order of what was going on, but who customarily would sing the Exsultet in a pre-Vatican II world?
Yeah, it would be the deacon. It has traditionally been assigned to the deacon. The in the absence of a deacon, a priest would do it because, of course, every priest has been ordained a deacon along the way. So we can still do functions that deacons do. So you're right that part of the post-conciliar expansion of this has been the permission for even a lay cantor to sing the Exsultet if that becomes necessary. So that the implication is that not every priest has a deacon, not every deacon or priest has the ability to sing this challenging work. And as I'm sure you know, as a musician, it is not easy. It takes a lot of practice to get familiar with the notes and the words and to actually sing them with meaning that can inspire people as they listen along. So a good cantor, a good lay cantor is allowed to do it. There's a little section of the Exsultet that's cut out in that case because the original text refers to the deacon who is singing it. He asks for the prayers of the people as he begins to sing. And you notice in the translation we use right now, he lists himself among the members of the order of Levi. There were this is a reference to Levi from the time of Moses. His descendants, the Levites, assisted the priests at the temple, and it created in Christian tradition the idea that deacons offer a similar service, a Levite service, Levitical service to assist the priests. So that reference, all of that obscure reference to the Levites is omitted when it is not a deacon or a priest who is singing the Exsultet.
You just mentioned, of course, too, that in that reference to the Levites, there makes that connection between the deacons. And you may honestly have just answered this, but I'm going to ask, why a deacon? Why is it so historically steeped that a deacon is the chosen role for the Exsultet?
You know, I assume it's because there are some similarities to the gospel. You notice how before the deacon sings the Exsultet, he goes to the priest, bows down, and asks for a blessing. The priest gives a blessing very similar to the one he gives before the proclamation of the gospel, and only mentioning that it's these paschal praises that the deacon is going to sing. And then the deacon goes to the ambo, and that's fairly new too, that he is allowed to go to the place from which the gospel is proclaimed. And of course, the message of the Exsultet is good news. It is the resurrection. So it is not a biblical reading, but it is a proclamation of what the Gospels are proclaiming. So I think for all those reasons, there are resonances with that role of the deacon being connected to the proclamation of the gospel at the Mass.
Okay, I could definitely see that connection then. So you've connected the pre and the post-Vatican II role for the Exsultet. Let's talk a little bit now in a much more modern stance versus, like you said, the 7th century. And let's talk about some of the specific changes that happened in that translation in 2010. What were some of the specific changes that were deemed necessary with the Roman Missal changes?
Yeah, let me share one other thing about the presentation of the book itself.
Yes.
Before we start looking at the words within the book, I neglected to mention something in the history of the Exsultet that people might find of some interest. And that is that, of course, in the days before books, they had to have some other kind of parchment and scroll to sing from. So 11th century Italy created these Exsultet scrolls, and you can still see some of these in museums in northern Italy. They're really quite extraordinary. Most people know Pisa as the place where the leaning tower is. It's the bell tower of the cathedral. The cathedral also has this lovely museum, and within it you can see examples of an Exsultet scroll. So try to imagine a very long, narrow piece of parchment with the music on it, and the deacon standing way up high in the ambo next to a very tall candle, and sort of throwing the parchment inch by inch over the top of the ambo while he's singing the Exsultet. So to add to the interest of this, there were artists who painted the biblical scenes that are alluded to in the Exsultet upside down on the parchment. So as the deacon scrolled it over, it would be right side up to the people who were watching it. It was kind of like an early movie.
Wow.
You could watch these things, watch the story unfold while the deacon went on and sang it. Some years ago, one of our publishers was trying to come up with an idea for publishing the Exsultet independently. I tried to get them to do the scroll, but they weren't going there. They thought nobody would pick up on that again. But the words, as you're asking about, the words are very interesting, and certainly did go through some adjustments along the way. The principles of translation were applied clear across, and as frequently happens in the work that ISIL does, they engage the work of a particular translator to get things started. That's called the base translator for a project. And in this case, they chose a person who was especially steeped in the history of chant and in religious life, and really became a beautiful text. It certainly went through some improvements through the process, but it got us the text we have today. The most notable thing, I think, is the bees. The first translation kind of eliminated some of the florid language concerning the work of bees, and especially in the second case, there's a reference to how the mother bee spins this wax, and we know now mother bees don't do the wax. That's worker bees who do that, and also there was a belief that bees reproduced asexually, so this became a special sign of purity and some mystery surrounding the production of wax. So we know a lot more about bees and wax today than we did then, and perhaps for those reasons, the enlightened first translation thought we'd better not try to add some things that could be head scratchers for folks. But the new rules were to include everything that was there in the Latin, not to eliminate things. And if there were some images that gave people pause, perhaps they were invitations, they were doorways into a deeper reflection on the history of the text, its meaning, and its significance for us today.
Let's talk about actually the text a little bit more, if you're okay with that. What are some of the scriptures on which the Exsultet is based?
It ends with a lovely reference to the morning star, which is a reference back to the book of Revelation, and even one of the letters of Peter, I think, makes a reference to Christ as the morning star. But one of the most famous expressions within the Exsultet is even known among many English speakers by its Latin words, and that is felix culpa. I don't know if you've run into that before, but it is something that you sometimes hear people use in conversation. It's an oxymoron that means happy fault. How could someone's fault be a source of happiness? And it's a reference back to the sin of Adam, because had he not sinned, had that fault not taken place, we would not have had the happy result of resurrection. Being born is one thing, but being born into eternal life is something else. So that reference back to Adam is one of the most significant phrases within the Exsultet, and still pretty well known. There are also references to the Exodus from Egypt, and this is extremely significant for the Easter Vigil. As you know, we have 9 possible readings that we may use at the Vigil, and among the Old Testament readings, the only one that is obligatory every year is the one about the Exodus. So the going through the waters of the Red Sea, escaping enemy, becomes a symbol of baptism and resurrection as Christ escapes death and reaches into new shores of new life. And of course, the newly baptized, literally through water, are turning away from a life away from grace, potentially susceptible to evil, into a life of greater commitment and joy. So the Exodus becomes a truly important, pivotal scene here, not only for the Exsultet, but for the Vigil in general. We referred to that event also as the Passover, looking back upon the Exodus, because before they get in their chariots and go to the Red Sea, the destroying angel has come through the camp and has caused destruction throughout, but passed over those who were very much blessed by God and protected by God, who would be brought in. So the Latin refers to the Passovers in the plural, and this is something we lose in English. Because it blends the Old Testament Passover with this New Testament resurrection as Passover. And I say we lose it in English because in some languages, French, for example, the word for Easter is Passover. So the celebration of Pâques, it uses the word from the book of Exodus to describe what we're doing even today. And there the idea of the Passovers is a little bit clearer.
We all know that in the translated version, the newly translated Roman Missal version, there is a short form and a long form. Can you shed any light on why they created a short and a long form?
Yeah, I am sure it relates to two different possibilities. One is the ability of the singer. If you really don't have someone gifted and they are working very hard to deliver this, maybe doing the short form is a more reasonable goal for that person. That was already going to be abbreviated somewhat if a lay singer would be doing it. So perhaps it was more that could be cut. And then I think it also fits the pattern that you see in the lectionary for Mass, where frequently one of the readings appears in both a longer and a shorter form.
Right.
When the Concilium was working on this after the council and before we got the books, they thought too, they wanted to bestow on people a generous supply of the scriptures, but they didn't want to overtax them with readings that were going to be too difficult, too long to grasp. So it may also have been an outreach to the sensibilities of the people participating at the vigil. It was going to be a long night. You don't want to expend all of your energy in the first few minutes of the evening before the rest of the liturgy gets underway. So I think in general, going with the long form is better. It gives it's faithful to the long tradition. It gives this expansive beginning and a solemn beginning to the vigil. But if there are various problems that people perceive, they may certainly go with the shorter form.
On a side note, too, but similarly, do you think it's that same type of consideration when it comes to allowing of the 9 readings that you already mentioned that, a church can choose, a minimum of 3? Is there any type of consideration in that regard for, again, time and the parish at large?
Yeah, I think that's why that permission is there. It allows for a reduction of the readings. In the history of the vigil has had many different numbers of readings. There was nothing consistent in the over the entire history of the vigil. So they knew they were in an area that had some variation, and they wanted to contribute to it in some way. Those readings have changed a bit since before the time of the council. Yeah, but what we've got now, they do want to have at least 3 readings from the Old Testament that come both from the law and the prophets, and they want the one of them to be the story of Exodus. So with those plus the New Testament reading from Romans and the Gospel of the year, there's a minimum of 5 readings, which gives this liturgy an especially solemn character. And since it is a vigil, it helps you experience the vigil. The readings themselves are considered the primary component of keeping the vigil while we are celebrating the resurrection.
Right, exactly. Okay, so transitioning now in my last set of questions is preparation. So does the Roman Missal have any preparatory information in a praenotanda or otherwise that helps the proclaimer prepare for the Exsultet?
Not really. It just kind of throws it out there for you. And it's like any of the other prayer texts of the Missal. They really are exceptionally rich, and it takes some reflection on them or consulting other commentaries to learn a little bit more about what is in them. So I think people's first mode of preparation is the same as you would when you approach the scriptures. Just go one-on-one, toe-to-toe with the Exsultet. Put the words in front of you, try to pray over them, meditate on them, see what it is that they're calling to mind. Try to put it in your own words, what this is all about, so that you've got a way of expressing the wonders that this is, and then use that awe, that wonder to aim for as you rehearse the Exsultet and prepare to sing it.
My last question for you is, have you ever sung the Exsultet at an Easter Vigil?
Yes, I have. Here at the cathedral right now, it is our custom for me to do it. We have wonderful deacons, but we kind of feel it's, since the bishop is presiding, I can step in there and do the singing. I have more of a musical background than the deacons do, so I can bring some of that experience into it. And in previous parishes where I've worked, I've been as the presider without a deacon, or with a deacon who really could not sing at all. I would sing the Exsultet, but one of the things I noticed then is how tiring it became to be the presider and the singer of the Exsultet. I was putting a lot of energy into its proclamation right away, and then I still had a long liturgy to go, many more notes to sing before the night was done. So I just, if I were presiding today, I'd probably be a little more interested in having somebody else do it. But since the bishop carries most of the weight of our Easter Vigil at this cathedral, I'm happy to step up and sing the Exsultet.
And Lord willing, you'll be singing it this year, I hope.
Yes, God willing, that'll happen. I think we did put a clip on our YouTube page last year, so if people wanted to see me sing the Exsultet, they could watch that video.
Oh, well, maybe I'll have to find that and put that in the show notes of this episode.
That'd be great. Yeah, and
Okay.
I'd appreciate it too if you could let people know about my book, Glory in the Cross, because I've got 4 pages in there about the background to the Exsultet. If people want to see a little bit more about that part and the other parts of Holy Week, I think they would find that very helpful in their preparation for this solemn proclamation.
Absolutely. I'll put that link in the show notes of the episode as well.
Great. Thanks, Amanda.
Well, Father Paul, as usual, this has been a wonderful interview. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise as we all prepare for this Lenten journey.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Blessings on you this Lent.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.